There is a wound many of us carry, invisible yet unbearably heavy. It begins not in adulthood, nor in adolescence, but in the earliest whispers of life, where we are first held, first heard, and first seen, in the arms of our mother. She is the mirror we first look into, the world's voice we first hear. She is our first symbol of love, safety, and connection, or perhaps of abandonment, unpredictability, and pain. And yet, we are rarely taught to examine this relationship beyond the superficial. We might blame, idealize, or try to forget. But the truth remains, you will never fully heal until you understand this about your mother. Not just who she was, but what she meant, what she symbolized, deep in your unconscious self. Let us now journey into 5 truths you must confront, not merely to understand your mother, but to understand yourself. Before your mother ever held you in her arms, she was herself a child held in someone else's. Before she whispered lullabies to soothe your fear, she trembled in the dark with her own fears unspoken. She was not born into the role of mother with some divine map of love and wisdom already etched into her. No, she, like all of us, was shaped by the world she was born into, molded by the circumstances she could not choose, and haunted by memories that never found the light of acknowledgement. She was first a daughter, a girl, small and wide-eyed, absorbing the silent rules of her household. Maybe in her home tears were seen as weakness, and praise was a rare currency to be earned, not freely given. Perhaps she learned early that to be loved meant to please, to stay quiet, to carry more than she could bear. Perhaps her dreams were laughed at, or worse, ignored. The love she needed might have come in fragments, conditional, inconsistent, or filtered through her parents' own wounds. And so she grew, not whole, but patchworked by survival. Imagine a girl growing up in the shadow of a mother who never looked her in the eyes, or a father who only saw her when she performed. She learns to bury her emotions, to hide her needs, to become invisible when she feels too much. Then one day she becomes a mother herself. And suddenly the very love she craved is expected to flow through her towards someone else. But how can she pour from a cup that was never filled? This is where compassion must enter, not as an excuse for the hurt she caused, but as a lens through which we can see the fuller truth. The woman who raised you was not just your mother. She was a soul, trying her best in the only way she knew how. Often stumbling, often repeating what was done to her, often afraid and ashamed of what she didn't know. Think of the mother who couldn't say "I love you," not because she didn't feel it, but because those words had never been spoken to her. Or the mother who criticized your every effort, not out of cruelty, but because perfection was her only defense against her own deep insecurities. The coldness you felt may have been her armor, the silence her only language of grief. And here's the aching paradox. You may have spent your life interpreting her distance as your unworthiness, her frustration as your failure. But none of that was ever truly about you. It was about the life she lived before you ever arrived, the shadows she never dared to face, the love she never fully received, and thus never learned how to give. There's an old saying that we bleed what we do not heal. Your mother bled too, sometimes onto you. That's not fair, but it is human. When you begin to see her as a whole person, wounded, resilient, shaped by her own mother and father, her own betrayals and silences, something inside you begins to shift. The rigid picture of mother softens. You begin to see the teenager who once looked in the mirror and asked if she was enough. The woman who may have cried alone after yelling at you. The girl who never got to be just a girl because she had to be strong, had to survive. This isn't about dismissing your pain. Your experiences are valid. The scars are real. But understanding invites healing. When we deconstruct the idealized or vilified image of our mother and allow her humanity to surface, we also grant ourselves permission to be whole, to acknowledge our pain without being consumed by it. Understanding her doesn't mean letting go of boundaries or pretending things were okay when they weren't. It means reclaiming your power to make meaning, to see clearly, to break the cycle, rather than live it out unconsciously. So ask yourself, what kind of world shaped your mother? What kind of pain did she never speak of? And what part of that silence still lives in you? She was a woman before she was your mother, a daughter before she was a woman, and long before she was anyone to you, she was someone trying to be someone, in a world that may not have been kind. To heal, you must see her not as the symbol you longed for, but as the human she actually was. Only then can you begin to understand the origins of your own wounds, and finally begin the journey to mend them. As children, we are not equipped to understand complexity. We do not possess the language of nuance or the tools of emotional analysis. We are small, tender beings with an immense need for connection, for touch, for affirmation. And because our survival depends entirely on those who raise us, we do not see them as flawed humans, we see them as gods, omnipotent, all-knowing, the source of all safety. In this sacred illusion, even when they hurt us, we instinctively assume the fault must be ours. When a mother turns her face away, the child does not ask, "What is troubling her?" Instead, the child concludes, "I must be unlovable." When she raises her voice in frustration or withdraws in silence, the child does not wonder, "Is she in pain?" but rather, "What did I do wrong?" This is the architecture of the young psyche, built not on truth, but on the need to feel secure in a world far too large and confusing to survive alone. These early misinterpretations do not vanish as we grow older. In fact, they crystallize. They become silent truths that live in the shadows of our self-worth. A mother's inattentiveness becomes a voice that says, "You don't matter." Her unpredictability becomes an inner anxiety that whispers, "You must keep everyone happy." We carry these conclusions into every corner of our lives, into our relationships, our work, our self-perception. The lens of the child becomes the mirror of the adult. Imagine a boy who longed for his mother's attention, but she was often distant. Not cruel, not violent, just emotionally absent, lost in her own internal battles. Maybe she was exhausted. Maybe she was depressed. Maybe she had never been shown what love looks like. But the boy didn't know any of that. He only knew that when he came into the room, her eyes did not light up. He learned to walk more quietly, to ask for less, to earn approval instead of expecting love. Years later, that same boy becomes a man who can't feel comfortable unless he's proving his worth. In his friendships, he's the fixer. In his romantic life, he fears vulnerability. In his career, he equates value with performance. He's haunted by a sense of being invisible, just as he once felt in that childhood home. And though he might barely remember the moments that shaped him, they echo in his behaviors every day. The great error we make is assuming our perception of our mother was reality, when it was actually a story our young mind created to make sense of confusion and protect us from despair. A child cannot fathom that a mother might be struggling, so the child takes responsibility instead. This is not a failure, this is a defense. But what once protected us can later imprison us if we never go back to examine those early assumptions. You may recall moments of your childhood that felt devastating. The time she forgot to pick you up, the birthday she didn't celebrate, the tears she dismissed. At the time, these events may have cracked something in you, and the interpretations you formed. "I'm not important, I must not be lovable, my feelings don't matter," became the beliefs you now live by without even realizing it. But what if those stories were never true? What if your mother's inability to see you was never a reflection of your worth, but of her blindness, her own fog, her own pain. What if her anger was not about you, but a volcano she didn't know how to contain? This is not about absolving her, but about freeing yourself from the tyranny of a child's misunderstanding. The wound is not simply what was done or not done to you. The deeper wound is in how you interpreted those moments, and how those interpretations became your identity. To begin healing, you must dare to look at those early experiences with new eyes. Adult eyes, compassionate eyes, eyes that can see the frightened, overwhelmed woman behind the mask of mother. And in doing so, you begin to see the frightened, overwhelmed child you once were, doing the best you could to make sense of it all. Only by revisiting these early perceptions can you begin to untangle the truth from the story. Only by naming the misunderstanding can you reclaim the parts of yourself you've buried. Your perception was never wrong, it was necessary, but now it's time to see what it could not. There is a difficult truth many resist, not out of denial but out of a deep, aching loyalty. Your mother may have loved you truly and deeply and still failed to give you what you needed. The heart does not want to hold both realities at once. We long for simplicity, the good mother or the bad one. We struggle to accept that the very person who tried to protect us may also have been the one who left the most enduring scars. But healing begins not with blame and not with blind reverence, but with the courage to see clearly. Love is not a guarantee of safety. It is not automatically nurturing or liberating. A mother can love with all her heart, and yet her love may arrive warped, shaped by fear, distorted by control, shadowed by her unmet needs. Love, when filtered through unhealed pain, can become a vessel for projection. And often it is the child who ends up carrying the weight. Many grow up confused by this contradiction. On the surface, everything looked fine. Meals were cooked, school was attended, birthdays were remembered, but beneath these gestures something essential was missing. Maybe it was emotional safety. Maybe it was the freedom to be flawed. Maybe it was the permission to exist without performing. There are mothers who see their children not as separate beings but as extensions of themselves. Their child's success becomes their validation, their child's failure a personal threat. In this arrangement, love is conditional. Affection flows when the child complies, but is withdrawn when the child asserts autonomy. The child quickly learns, I must be who she needs me to be, or I will lose her love. Picture a young girl who earns praise only when she excels, when she brings home perfect grades, smiles at every family gathering, or fits into the mold her mother silently constructed. The girl grows up associating achievement with belonging. She becomes hyper-aware of her behavior, attuned not to her own needs, but to what will please others. She becomes a master of performance, of invisibility, of adapting, and inside her grows a quiet, relentless anxiety. Am I good enough yet? Years pass. She becomes a woman, competent and capable, yet hollow. Every mistake feels catastrophic, every failure a confirmation that she is not worthy. She may not even realize that the voice whispering these doubts inside her is not her own. It is the echo of a childhood spent earning affection rather than receiving it freely. This is emotional enmeshment, not born of malice but of unawareness. A mother whose identity is unstable may cling to her child for meaning. A mother who has never allowed her own emotions may unconsciously rely on her child to regulate hers. The result is a child who becomes the caretaker, the soother, the peacekeeper. The child suppresses their own needs to preserve the fragile emotional world of the mother. You may have grown up thinking this was normal. You may have called it being mature for your age, or just being helpful. But these roles, when placed on a child too soon, are forms of abandonment in disguise. They ask the child to deny their own becoming in order to hold together the mother's unspoken pain. And yet, the paradox remains. She may have loved you, perhaps desperately, perhaps in the only way she knew how. This love can coexist with harm. Recognizing this doesn't diminish her, it humanizes her. And more importantly, it frees you. It is no longer about whether she meant to hurt you. Intent does not erase impact. The unmet needs of your childhood are not accusations, they are invitations. Invitations to meet yourself now with the care you once sought. It is not your fault that you didn't receive what you needed, but it is your responsibility now to understand those needs and honor them. The wounds of emotional enmeshment are subtle, but they live in how we show up for ourselves. They whisper in the pressure to be perfect, the fear of disappointing others, the inability to rest without guilt. To heal is not to resent your mother, but to reclaim what was never freely given, the right to be fully, unapologetically yourself. She gave what she could, but you needed more. And now, with awareness and tenderness, it is time to give that more to yourself. To forgive is often misunderstood. It is mistaken for excusing wrongs, for wiping the slate clean as if pain never existed, or for restoring broken relationships without conditions. Many resist forgiveness because it feels like surrendering power, as if by forgiving we let the one who hurt us off the hook. But this is a false belief. Forgiveness is not a gift for the one who caused harm. It is liberation for the one who suffered. It is the unshackling of your own spirit from the chains of the past. When we carry the weight of resentment, anger, or bitterness, we become prisoners of those who hurt us. Our energy, once vibrant and alive, becomes tethered to old wounds and stories that replay in our minds like a broken record. We carry the past inside us, and it shapes how we move forward, or how we don't. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or denying what happened. It means refusing to let the pain define us any longer. There is a story of a man who had not spoken to his mother in 2 decades. Their relationship was fractured, marred by neglect and silence. For years he held a fierce anger toward her, a fire that burned inside him and threatened to consume everything good in his life. One day, he decided to write a letter. Not to send, but to write. In this letter he poured out his pain, the moments when she was absent, the words she never said, the love he longed for but never received. He named his sorrow, his confusion, his rage. But then something shifted. As he wrote, his anger softened. He recognized her as a flawed human, shaped by her own struggles, not a perfect villain. His final words in that letter were not of blame, but of compassion, not because she had earned it, but because he no longer wanted to carry the heavy burden of hate. In forgiving her, he freed himself. Forgiveness is an act of courage. It is a refusal to be chained to suffering. It is saying to yourself, I will not allow this pain to have power over my life. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to the other person. It is a gift you give to yourself. If you struggle with this, know that forgiveness does not require you to forget, to reconcile, or even to speak to the person who hurt you again. It requires only that you reclaim your energy, your peace, and your freedom. It allows you to turn your gaze inward toward healing rather than backward into wounds that no longer serve you. One powerful practice is to write a letter to your mother, not to send, but to say what you never could. Speak honestly about your feelings, the love, the pain, the confusion. Tell her what you needed, what you missed, and what you still carry. Let your voice be heard, not by her, but by yourself. This act gives you permission to express what was silenced, to honor your feelings, and to begin the process of release. Forgiveness is not easy. It asks us to confront the deepest parts of our hearts, to face the hurt that feels unbearable. But it is also a path toward wholeness. When you forgive, you break the cycle. You no longer pass down the pain or allow it to define your identity. Instead, you step into your power as the author of your own story, a story not dictated by wounds, but by healing. To forgive is to reclaim your soul. It is to open the door to your future, unburdened by the weight of yesterday. It is to say, I will honor my pain, but I will not be ruled by it. In this act, you begin to heal, not for her sake, but for your own. The mother who bore you, who raised you, who shaped the earliest moments of your life, lives on within you. This is a truth as profound as it is unsettling. Whether she was a source of warmth or a wellspring of pain, her presence is woven into the very fabric of your being. She is not merely a figure from your past, but an echo in your psyche, a living, breathing force within your inner world that colors your thoughts, feelings, and patterns. Her voice may not speak aloud anymore, but it whispers constantly in the chambers of your mind. Sometimes it is gentle, sometimes harsh. It may be the voice that judges you with merciless rigor, the one that doubts your worth, the one that warns you of danger when none exists. Or it may be the voice that comforts and encourages, a remnant of the love that was given. Yet, whether tender or critical, this internal mother guides much of your internal dialogue. Her fears live in your instincts. If she was anxious, you may find yourself inexplicably restless or cautious. If she was self-sacrificing, you may unconsciously surrender your own needs to avoid conflict. The patterns she embodied, how she related to herself and others, replay silently in the relationships you build. The shadow of her presence is woven into the choices you make and the ways you seek or avoid connection. Imagine a woman who repeatedly abandons her own desires in the name of keeping peace in her relationships. She never says no, always pleases, hides her discomfort, and feels unseen despite her efforts. On the surface, it appears to be a flaw in her character or a problem with her partners. But beneath the surface lies a deeper truth. This pattern mirrors the way her mother lived, always giving, always silent, never asking for herself. The daughter, without realizing it, has internalized this survival script and enacts it unconsciously. This is the internal mother, an imprint left not on paper but on the soul. The trauma, love, fears, and hopes she carried now live within you, waiting to be acknowledged. To heal, you must meet this inner presence, not with judgment, not with anger or shame, but with a quiet awareness. You must become the compassionate witness to your own internal world. Ask yourself, when you are in distress, what voice do you hear inside? Is it critical, shaming, fearful? Is it the harsh judge that tells you you are not enough? Or is it a voice that is anxious, protective, but controlling? This voice may not be your own. It may be hers, the voice of your mother, echoing through time within your psyche. The good news is that this internal mother, while powerful, is not immutable. You have the power to rewrite the script, to respond to this voice with your own, one that is kind, nurturing, and strong. You can become the mother you needed but never had. You can speak back to the critical whisper saying, "You do not define me." You can hold your own fears gently, offering reassurance instead of fear. This process is not easy. It requires courage to face the parts of yourself shaped by someone else's pain and limitation. It calls for patience to nurture yourself where you were once neglected. But it is the path to true healing, transforming the wounds inherited into sources of strength. Your mother, gone or present, imperfect or idealized, continues to live within you. You carry her voice, her fears, her patterns, but you also carry the capacity to meet her with awareness, to embrace her humanity, and to mother yourself with the love and acceptance that transcends the past. In this meeting, between the internalized mother and the adult you now are, lies the possibility of wholeness. the chance to free yourself from inherited chains and to write a new story, one where you are both the child and the nurturer, both the wounded and the healed. This is the journey not just to forgiveness, but to liberation. To understand your mother is not to blame her, it is to reclaim your story. To see her clearly is to finally see yourself. You are not here to carry her pain. You are here to break the cycle. To feel the grief, yes, but also the grace. To become the parent your inner child needed. And perhaps, one day, the ancestor your lineage deserved. You will never fully heal until you understand this. Your mother gave you life, but you must give yourself the freedom to live it.